Hello, Oilers fans. Austin here, and in today's video, I wanted to talk about Kris Knoblauch, the head coach of the Edmonton Oilers. I want to talk about kind of what he's been doing with this team, with the lineups, his tactics during games, his adjustments, and whether I think that there's a bit of a problem right now with Kris Knoblauch, and whether we should have the conversation of when he is going to get fired rather than should he. In my personal opinion, he's not going to. This is not me saying he's going to, and I'm also not advocating for Kris Knoblauch to get fired. However, over the past several weeks, there have been some concerning signs within the Oilers game and within how Knoblauch is approaching the media. Some of the things that he's saying, calling the team fragile multiple times within a week. Last night, he called out the group and, for the turnovers and, saying guys that aren't contributing on offense are contributing on goals against, and you can't have that, which I totally agree. Like, that's a normal coach thing to say. But he did something against Buffalo that also pissed me off, and we're going to discuss all of it. So if you end up enjoying this video, just make sure to hit that like button. And if you really like it, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And as always, let me know all of your thoughts in the comment section below. Let me know your thoughts on Kris Knoblauch. Do you think he is the guy that this team can win a Stanley Cup with? Do you think he has what it takes? Can he get back to the Kris Knoblauch of last season where it was a bit more stable? Or are we in, full chaos, line juggling Kris Knoblauch for the rest of his time here? Because last year, just to give context, he came in and he slowed things down and he stabilized Edmonton's game. He turned the Oilers basically from a high octane, high event team that Jay Woodcroft coached to a low event game. Excuse me, my voice. To a low event style team where they focused on neutral zone defense. They focused on zone defense, preventing a lot of inner slot shots and trying to prevent rush chances against. However, this season, we have seen some major regression in a lot of his coaching tactics, and you have to give credit to other teams around the league. They scout, they know what's going on, they know how to adjust to the Edmonton Oilers, and at the first sign of trouble for Kris Knoblauch, he goes to the McDavid and Draisaitl combo on that top line, which isn't new. Every coach that has ever coached the Edmonton Oilers does that. However, there are certain situations where he will just put them together anyways, and, in games where I wish he wouldn't, there's a lot of games where it looks like he's rolling all four lines, and then for no reason whatsoever, he suddenly will start splitting everyone up, and then everyone's, you have Henrique suddenly on line 1, you have Hyman on line 3, you have Kapanen getting a shift with Draisaitl, and he'll do that for a while. The Oilers get down in the third period, and then he loads up McDavid and Draisaitl for the entire third period. By the end of the game, those two are absolutely gassed, like last night against Buffalo. This is kind of the main reason why I wanted to talk about this. There was a situation in Buffalo last night after Edmonton lost. Connor McDavid, he skated by the bench, and it looks like he's yelling at someone. He kind of puts his arms in the air, and you can tell he's very animated towards someone on that Edmonton Oilers bench. Now, it's hard to see who he was directing that towards, but in my opinion, it did look like he was directing something towards the coaching staff. It might not have been Kris Knoblauch specifically. Something was being directed towards the coaches. And under context here, the Oilers were down by a goal, minute and a half left in the game. Buffalo ices the puck. They didn't call a timeout. And McDavid and them had been out there for a little while, and then Buffalo ices the puck again, not long after that. So another defensive zone faceoff for Buffalo, and the Oilers don't call a timeout. And then, of course, we all know the Oilers don't end up tying it. There's no more whistles after that second icing by the Sabres. And I think what was going on there, I think Connor McDavid was mad that no timeout was called. And why would you not call a timeout in that situation? The first icing, I could maybe understand the logic. You have a tired group of Sabres out there. You get your line matchup that you want. You're assuming that your top guys can maybe do something against Buffalo's, mix and match of players just trying to hold on to a 1-goal lead. That's fine. But the Oilers, they don't get a whole lot of pressure. They don't get a lot of zone time or shots. Puck goes down the ice for a second icing. This is where the timeout needs to be called. This is where you need to get your play drawn up. But again, I don't know what the logic is in not using your timeout. Timeouts don't carry over the next game. Like, this is where I could see frustration from Connor McDavid, especially because he had been played so much in that third period. I think he finished the night with just over 26 minutes time on ice. The coaching staff went to him and Draisaitl a lot to try and tie this game up, and they have an opportunity to slow things down, catch their breath, get a play drawn up, and then go and do the job. Why would they not call the timeout? Again, I already referenced because you already have your line matchup and, you're trying to take advantage of a tired group that's been icing it. But in my opinion, I don't care if the other team gets a 30-second rest from the timeout because you still have your line matchup. That doesn't change the line match. Where is the trust in your players to get the job done? You have to trust that your line matching is going to work in this situation. You have to trust that the Oilers' top players are going to be able to execute. And it was very clear that there was no sense of planning. There was no attack. The Oilers had some zone time. They moved it around. They couldn't really get anything close to the net. Buffalo kept us to the perimeter. Puck goes out of the zone, and then that was that. Buffalo holds on for the 3-2 win. McDavid, he's frustrated. He's yelling something towards the bench, and then they skate off the ice. Now, it's not just the fact that he did not call a timeout. There are other reasons why Kris Knoblauch, to me, is a little bit on hot ice. But before I talk about those reasons, I do want to show his stats compared to Jay Woodcroft's stats, because Jay Woodcroft and Kris Knoblauch have now coached the same amount of games as coach of the Edmonton Oilers. After last night, Noblock's record after 133 games is 83-41-9. Jay Woodcroft's record after 133 games, 79-41-13. Jay Woodcroft had a 53 goals for percentage, 54 expected goals percentage, and a 100 PDO. Kris Knoblauch, 54% goals for, 55% expected goals, and a 998 PDO. So when you take a look at the advanced metrics here, you could maybe argue that the Oilers might be slightly unlucky when it comes to their finishing, the goaltending. They're slightly below that 1 PDO, but the team is what they are. They're a good possession team. They generally do outscore their opponents. However, there are other things going on here. There's more context that's needed. Look at the rosters under Woodcroft and Kris Knoblauch. I think Kris Knoblauch's roster that he has is far superior on paper to anything that Jay Woodcroft had. So Jay Woodcroft getting really strong results with what I would consider to be an inferior roster, I think that shows something. That shows that he may have been a better coach than a lot of us thought, and maybe dumping him after that 2-9-1 start last year, maybe it was a little premature. And that's not to take anything away from Kris Knoblauch. Again, he led this team to the Stanley Cup final. The team was down 0-3 in the finals. They won 3 straight. They could not win that 4th straight to win a Stanley Cup. I don't think Kris Knoblauch getting fired is the answer. I'm just being completely honest here, but I want to provide some data. I want to provide some context, and then also provide evidence of things that Kris Knoblauch is doing that I think could lead to him losing his job, because we've seen other coaches in the past with the Edmonton Oilers do this stuff, especially when it comes to the lineup. Speaking of the lineups, here are the Edmonton Oilers forward group. At 5-on-5 this season, I have sorted by expected goals for percentage. All the way at the bottom, Mattias Janmark, 45.14 expected goals for percentage this season at 5-on-5, and his actual goals for percentage is 39.58%. He has been on the ice for 19 goals for, 29 goals against at 5-on-5. For those doing the math, that is a -10 goal differential at 5-on-5. And you know who gets so much more ice time than players like Jeff Skinner, players like Corey Perry, players like Connor Brown? It's Mattias Janmark. Mattias Janmark consistently gets to play in this lineup. He is never healthy scratched, and he is someone that they rely on for, shutting other teams' best players down on that third line. And Janmark, Henrique, and Brown, they are among the bottom forwards in expected goals and actual goals. The only one in this bottom 6 that is actually positive when it comes to goal differential is Corey Perry. 29 goals for, 19 goals against. He's a +10 rating at 5-on-5. Your 39-year-old, soon-to-be 40-year-old absolute geezer who can barely skate is putting up better metrics than guys like Janmark and Henrique and Connor Brown. And these are the guys that Kris Knoblauch consistently gives 13, 14 minutes a night to on that third line. Makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. Now, Jeff Skinner, someone that, of course, we've all wanted in the lineup throughout the entire season. His advanced metrics are not great. 49% expected goals, 44% actual goals. He's a -5 at 5-on-5. However, a lot of these stats are skewed from earlier in the season. If I were to do a split from January 1st onward, which I could do right now, actually, let's do that. By date, we are going to go January 1st to today. You'll see what I mean here by this. We'll say 100 minutes time on ice. This is on Natural Stat Trick, by the way. If you do want to check it out, definitely go there. So if we sort by expected goals for percentage, Jeff Skinner is sitting at a 53% expected goals percentage since January 1st, and he's been on the ice for 9 goals for 4 goals against. That is a +5 rating. His expected goals is positive. His actual goals is positive, and he's the guy that keeps getting sat. This is the guy that Kris Knoblauch keeps healthy scratching, but he keeps playing Matthias Janmark. 6 goals for, 13 goals against. 47% expected goals percentage. 31% actual goals percentage. Connor Brown, 38% actual goals for percentage. Like, what are we doing? Jeff Skinner is the guy that gets scapegoated here? This is the guy that gets scapegoated. Really? That's who Kris Knoblauch continues to scratch every single night. But, well, got to keep playing Matthias Janmark. Right? Got to keep playing Matthias Janmark for that penalty kill that ranks 27th in the NHL. That's absolutely abysmal. I don't know, man. I just take a look at some of the decisions that Noblock is making, and it reminds me of decisions that Woodcroft was making, reminds me of decisions that Dave Tippett was making, reminds me of decisions that Todd McClellan was making, and on and on and on. We have beaten this horse to death so much in oil country, but it is worth talking about because there are signs that maybe you might need a change. Now, would a head coach actually get fired this close to the playoffs? What is the precedent in that? That never happens, right? It happens very rarely. Very rarely does it happen. One of the most notable firings before the playoffs was the New Jersey Devils in the 1990-2000 season, and Robbie Ftorek was coaching that year for New Jersey, and then there was 8 games left in the season. He gets fired. Larry Robinson takes over as head coach. And if you take a look at Larry Robinson as coach, they won that championship. They won the Stanley Cup in 99-2000 after Larry Robinson took over for the final 8 games of the season. Now, Ftorek was fired because they didn't like how the team was playing as they got closer to the playoffs. They had been on a bit of a losing streak, and that's just something that they wanted to make the change. They wanted to make the change. And if you're in Edmonton, if you're Brass in Edmonton, if you're Jeff Jackson and Stan Bowman, would they do that? Would they even have a coach that could come in? Is that enough time to get the boys ready, get them set up for the playoffs? Do the Oilers have the ability themselves to flip that switch? Because the other main issue with the team is, when they get to the playoffs, they'll just flip a switch. Oh man, we've been waiting for that flip to switch all season long. We talk about it in the preseason. It's just preseason. They don't care. They'll flip the switch in the regular season. And then as the regular season goes along, they have good games, but for the most part, they're very they just tread water. They have one really, really incredible game, and then they're back to just normal. And then they'll have a bad game, and then they're back to normal. When is that flip going to get switched for the Edmonton Oilers? And can it get switched? Do they have the capability? Do they have the coaching staff that can do that? There's a lot of questions regarding this team. This is not me. Again, I'm not advocating for a head coach to get fired. I'm just creating a dialogue, a discussion, and I want to hear from you. I want to know what you all think. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, tell someone that you love them. And as always as well, fight like a kid, fight like Ben. Let's go Oilers. We'll see you in the next one.